Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on Scouting's updates to the barriers of abuse. A couple of housekeeping items and then introductions, and then we'll begin. First off, you have no audio or video, so don't worry. This is a webinar, so only the speakers are visible for this session. There is a Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. If you have any questions throughout, you can type those into there. Levi Knight, District Director from Black Otter and out of Billings, will be monitoring that. At the end of the webinar, we will remain on for any further questions that anyone has in order to make sure that everything's been answered. We expect this to be pretty brief. Also, this webinar is being recorded for future use for us and distribute to others throughout the council. So welcome and thank you for taking the time to join us again. I'm Terry Dutton. I'm Director of Support Services and Chief Operating Officer for Montana Council. Sitting with me here is Pat Dannenberg, our Director of Field Services, and we are in our Great Falls office. Pat is usually in the Billings office. Also online tonight, as I mentioned, we have Levi Knight from Billings, and we have also our Scout Executive and CEO, Jory Dillinger, who is with us tonight as well. With that, we will go ahead and kick off the meeting with Pat.
Hi guys, thanks for joining us tonight, and just excited to share with you guys tonight a few things. So youth protection really started a while ago for us, but just so you know, in the 1970s, youth protection for scouting started to come in play, where we were able to start saying, all right, we're going to add applications and we're going to start asking questions for adult applications and really start tracking any interactions that we may have with concerns for adults. And then in the 90s, we came out with the youth protection videos. I'm not sure if you remember those things called VHS, but those tapes, the 3 or 4 tapes came out in the 80s, and then in the 90s, we continued to grow and expand youth protection, and by the 2000s, it went digital. And so the last real true variance of an update towards the barriers of abuse was done in 2018. And so this year, we have a new update, and really and truly, tonight, we hope to help explain those updates. Terry?
Thank you. So the most important thing to know about this change in policy here is that it is effective September 1st of this year. And what that is that previously and up to this point, and including this point, the BSA has had what a lot of people refer to as the 72-hour rule, which means that at overnight activities that an unregistered adult could attend and participate without being registered as long as they were not part of that event for more than 72 hours. There were more restrictive rules in certain camps, in certain units, in certain councils, but in general, that's the BSA 72-hour rule. This change that takes effect September 1st is that all adults staying overnight in connection with a scouting activity must be currently registered in an adult fee required position or as an adult program participant. And there's a limited exception for Cub Scout overnight programs and parents and guardians, which we will describe as we go along. But again, the rule very simply is all adults staying overnight in connection with scouting activities must be currently registered in an adult fee position.
And Terry, why not? We could have done this today, right? But we chose not to.
Absolutely. This is a rule that anyone is welcome to start putting in place in their unit now. We want, and the BSA wants our scouters to have some time and notification to communicate this information to ensure that we can all be in compliance by September 1st. And those of you on this session tonight as leaders of our districts and of our council, we hope that you can assist in sharing this information so that everyone is prepared for that.
Absolutely. And really, there is one exception to it, really, you could say. The Cub Scout program does have an overnight exception. So Cub Scout parents or legal guardians taking place in an overnight Cub Scout program with their own child or legal ward are not required to register as adults. So all adults must review, however, how to protect your child from child abuse, it's that little guide that's at the front of the Scout handbook for our Cub Scouts. And then in addition, the parent or legal guardian must be accompanied by a registered leader at any time they are with youth members other than their own child or ward. So all other adults that are staying overnight must be currently registered in an adult fee required position. So to put it simply, all 18 and older adults attending a Scouts BSA, venturing, Sea Scout, or exploring overnighter, they have to be currently registered. Now, if it's an 18 plus adult attending a Cub Scout overnighter event activity who are not with the parent, who are not the parent or the legal guardian of a Scout in attendance, must be registered also. So I was talking with Terry, and look, here's a great example of how to understand it a little bit. So if you have a family and they go on a Cub Scout pack overnighter, and in that family, you've got the two parents, you've got an older brother that is 18, and then you've got a younger sibling, and that younger sibling is a Cub Scout, female Cub Scout. Can they all stay in the same tent together, Terry?
Sure, it's a family activity.
Right.
Cub Scouts family activity.
The exception to this with the new rule, though, comes into play for the 18-year-old son, right? So the 18-year-old son, he is going to have to register as an adult leader with that pack to go camping, right?
Correct.
So they can stay in the same tent, even though the 18-year-old's going to have to get registered.
So that brings up the question, what is an adult fee required position? Basically, there are 70 positions in the BSA that meet this category. And most of you are in one of those positions. The BSA registration guidebook has those listed. These are unit positions, district positions, council positions. There is a full list that's available on the Youth Protection Frequently Asked Questions webpage. These things include committee member, unit scouter reserve, assistant scoutmaster, den leader, Weeblo's den leader, charter organization representative, district member at large. All of those sorts of positions are adult fee required positions. Merit badge counselor is not a fee required position, so that would not meet this requirement. That would not be adequate to meet this requirement about registration, nor does a lion cub parent partner or a tiger parent partner. Those don't meet this requirement as well. None of those are fee positions, so they don't meet this requirement that takes place September 1st.
And really and truly, the lion cub partner and the tiger adult partner, those adult partners have really been dropped by scouting, so those are not being positions that are identified on any charter now. A Cub Scout mom, and we do have a few scenarios, we're going to go through a few of these scenarios, and hopefully they'll help answer some of the questions as we go. So I'll go ahead and lead off with scenario 1. So Cub Scout mom wants to camp overnight with her bear Cub Scout at a pack campout. She's not registered with the BSA. Is this okay? Yes. The exception for Cub Scouting allows a parent to attend with their child, even if not registered. Reminder, the parent does not count as the 2 deep leadership, nor can they supervise children other than their own. So, for example, that mom can't take 3 of the Cub Scouts off on a quick hike. Why? One is 2 deep leadership. The other is she's not registered. So you do have to have registered leadership to count for this activity.
So the next scenario, an Arrow of Light den is camping with a troop for their scouting adventure pin. Do all the adults need to be registered? This one is complex, but the parents who are attending with their own Arrow of Light scouts do not need to be registered and will camp with those Arrow of Light scouts as a den. Again, reminder that den must still have its own 2 deep leadership separate from the troop's leadership. So that Arrow of Light den would need to have at least 2 registered leaders, but not all parents of those Arrow of Light scouts need to be registered. However, the troop side of this equation, all of the adults camping with the troop must be registered.
Right, and just a quick reminder, you do have to be registered and trained as Cub Scout leaders to do any camp out.
Scenario 3, a Scouts BSA parent is one of the drivers for a campout. They do not volunteer for the troop other than driving. Do they have to register? It depends. If the parent plans to stay overnight, they must register with the troop in one of the approved positions. If they are driving to the event and not staying overnight, they do not have to register. This would be a good use of the unit scout or reserve position. If they're intending to stay overnight, then they can register in that position. But if they're just driving, they do not need to register.
Scenario 4, a venturing crew is participating in an overnight event at a public location, a submarine. Do all adults present have to register? Every adult staying overnight with the crew must register. Just remember, members of the public who may be present are not part of the crew outing and therefore not required to register. They're also not supposed to be interacting with our youth. So if you have an area that you're sleeping in, the general public is not part of that area to sleep in. So
this may be a good time to mention in venturing, often the question comes up that some of our venturer scouts are 18, 19, 20 years old. The BSA considers them to be adults with regards to the requirement for youth protection training and a background check. This is where you've seen the position, you might have heard the position unit participant or venturing participant. Those categories are what I would call the young adult category, 18, 19, 20-year-olds that are still program participants but are adults in the eyes of the BSA. So anyone who falls into that young adult category must also be registered in a fee-paying position.
right.
So a merit badge counselor wants to attend a troop overnight activity. Remember, a merit badge counselor would not qualify for that unless they have registration in a fee-paying position in addition to being a merit badge counselor. Merit badge counselor is a council position. It is not a fee-paying position, so they would need to be registered in a position from that list of 70 choices of approved positions. And again, only adults registered in a fee position may stay overnight. So merit badge counselors may not do that unless they have a fee-paying position in addition to being a merit badge counselor.
And Terry, just help clarify some of this too. I think it's another part of it. You have a merit badge counselor, let's say they go there for the day and they don't stay for the camp out part where it's overnight, but they're there for just a day.
Absolutely, and this requirement is talking about overnight stays. So this is, and it's a good point, this is not related to day activities, it's related to overnight stays. So that's a really good point. And merit badge counselors, you know, their purpose in scouting is to work with scouts on merit badges, to support scouts through the merit badge process. They are not intended to be, as a merit badge counselor, a regular supervisor of activities and of scouts. That's outside of the scope of just a merit badge counselor role. So again, they need to be in one of those other fee-paying positions.
Right. So any merit badge counselor, let's say a troop leaves on a Friday, goes on a camp out, but then on Saturday, the merit badge counselor shows up to do the merit badge. Maybe some other parents show up also just to see what's going on for the day. They can come for that day part, but then that night comes for the overnight part and they need to take off.
That's right. They can't stay overnight.
That's correct. All right.
Scenario 6, scouting's barriers to abuse states all aspects of the scouting program are open to observation by parents and leaders. Does this update change that policy? No. Parents are still able to attend any program within scouting. However, to stay overnight, they must register with the BSA. So back to what Pat was just talking about, you can come during the day, attend any of the activities, but in order to camp overnight, they must register.
The Order of the Arrow is hosting a fellowship weekend. Do the OA volunteers have to register with the BSA? Yes. All adults staying overnight in connection with the scouting activity must be currently registered in an adult fee required position as listed or as an adult program participant.
A Cub Scout pack is having their unit camp out, and a grandparent wants to bring his grandson to the pack camp out because the parents are out of town. Does the grandparent have to register? Yes. The Cub Scout parent exception is limited to the parent or legal guardian. A grandparent or other family member who is not the legal guardian can attend, but they must be in a registered position. The BSA has created this exception specifically for parents and legal guardians, and the definition of legal guardian utilized can be found if you look at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services website, and that is the definition of legal guardian that the BSA is utilizing for this rule. So yes, this grandparent can attend, but they would need to be registered if they are not the legal guardian of the child.
And Terry, I really love that explanation of what is a legal guardian. And so now Scouting is just fully acknowledging what the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services website is.
Correct.
So. Levi?
So what should you do next? As we mentioned, sorry, I was monitoring the Q&A. As we mentioned, this is effective September 1st, 2023. However, you can implement this policy as soon as you would like. So as participants in this webinar, we encourage you to inform the units under your charge now about the coming change. Ensure they meet current policy, but again, encourage that early adoption. We will send this out via council newsletter, roundtables, every method that we use to communicate. We will share this information, and then we'll obviously rely on you as our key volunteers at the council and district level to help us spread the word and look for additional ways that we can help to implement this change and get the word out about it.
So appreciate everyone being on with us tonight. If you have any questions, feel free to email myself, Pat Danneberg at scouting.org, or Terry Dutton or Levi Knight. Any of us are welcome to help answer your questions in regards to this. In the earlier email that I sent to each of you, there was a link in there to the barriers to abuse, and it had the link for the page that was being updated. It's more specifically related in this scenario for youth protection standards. And so advise you to take a quick look at that. There's a Q&A page also affiliated with it. Tonight, in some of these scenarios, I really hope help answer your questions, and feel free to reach out to us. With us also tonight, just want to acknowledge a few people that we have online with us. So we have Jory, our Scout executive. He's online with us tonight, just in case we have any questions here that we need to help answer. And then Gary Ely is also online with us. He's our Council Scout executive. And I know and realize that the majority of people that have joined us tonight are commissioners. And so very grateful for each of you to join us tonight. And our real hope is just to be able to take this opportunity and allow you guys to ask us questions in regards to this, how we think and feel about it. Also, is it exists, and also want to take the time to say we appreciate you guys and everything you do for Scouting. And today, it's some people could say, all right, this is more of a hindrance or something like that, and I would actually challenge that. In my early goings, I was a little hesitant on a change with this, but I do like these rules. I do like what it's doing, and I do believe it helps make the Scouting environment safer for our kids, and not just safer for our kids, but also safer for us adults, so that we're aware of what's going on around us and have the people that are trained and meant to be there. So, Levi, how are we looking for questions? Any questions out there that we can help answer for anyone?
There's a bunch of questions that just came in that we can answer.
So Levi, let's do this for any of us who are on screen. When Levi has the question, if you want to be the person to answer it, if you can just indicate so that we know who's going to be speaking up. Sorry to interrupt you.
Do you want me to read the questions?
No, go ahead. No,
Go
Hey,
ahead.
hey, Levi, before you start, Pat misspoke, and God forbid, I do not want to have the promotion, but he called me the council exec, and I'm not willing to do that. Jory does it so much better.
All right, Levi, first question.
So there's a lot of questions, several of them that deal with the turnaround time for getting an adult registered and how we are going to address that.
Okay.
Looking at Pat to raise his hand.
Yeah, so, okay, so a couple things for everyone to be aware of. At the end of April, affiliated with council convention, we're doing our quick plug on council convention. Come show up for it. We have classes and seminars going on that Saturday. One of those that we will be talking about that day is promoting applications for adults being received online. And so on that weekend, we'll turn it on. And then thereafter, we'll have a little promo video that we share out with everyone. But you will be able to take and do online applications. And so that will speed up the process. In addition to that, if you really are looking to turn in applications, one of the ways that you can handle that now for us is to take an email and send the application over to membership@montanabsa.org. And then another way is to, of course, the same way that you're used to doing, take the paper application straight into the Council Scout office or get it to your district executive at a roundtable or some other function. So.
There is a couple, there's sort of a group of questions that I think can be answered together. One of them is asking about a fee. One is asking if the criminal background check is done every year, and one is asking to address YPT requirements.
Well, why don't you start with the fee one, and we'll see who wants to answer that.
The question is there going to be a fee reduction for adults only need to register for one overnight event?
No. So once you register as an adult leader, you're registered for the entire year. And so similar as any other situation, you're registering as a leader, which means not only do you have to turn in the application, but you're also going to have to do the youth protection training that's online. And then depending on the position that you register in, you'll have to do the training for that too.
Then the next question in that related vein, is a criminal background check done every year?
So criminal background checks are done when you first initially turn in an application. If you turn in any additional application, it triggers a process where the application is tagged for going back through a background check again. In addition to that, national, if you look at some of the fine print rules, national does reserve the right to sporadically do a background check on you. Could they do it once every year? Yes. Could they do it every 6 months now? Yes. Could they do it every other year? National's definition of it is it could be spot checked at any point in time now.
And then can you address YPT as a requirement along with registration?
So I'll do that one. So as Pat said, youth protection training is required for anyone upon initial registration with the BSA. And the Montana Council requirement is that your youth protection training is current for the duration of the period you're registering for. So for example, if you were registering for 2023 here, your youth protection training must remain current for the entire duration of 2023. It cannot expire during your registration term. So when you're doing rechartering, for example, what we're looking at is the end of the year that you're rechartering and making sure that youth protection is current beyond that end of the registration period.
Question, are you going to discuss the requirements for adult females for any activities where females are attending?
So to clarify what's being mentioned is the BSA has a requirement that anytime there are female youth in attendance, there must be an over 21 registered female adult leader in attendance at that event and activity with that unit as well. That requirement has not changed. That continues to be a requirement, that any activity where there is a female youth, there needs to be an adult 21 or older female registered scouter with that unit.
And Terry, explain also the requirement too that's affiliated with being 21, because you can't be 18 and count towards that number of adults going now, right? You have to be 21 plus, right?
So what's required, you know, and we'll have to kind of split this off a little bit because Cub Scouts and Scouts BSA is different. But you know, the key things to keep in mind are the 2 deep leadership rule, which means that for any activity in scouting, whether overnight, day activity, troop meeting, pack meeting, doesn't matter. The BSA has a 2 deep rule, which means that 2 registered adults aged 21 or older must be in attendance for that event. And again, if there's a female scout present, then one of those, at least one, you know, needs to be female. Leaders that are, you know, in Scouts BSA, leader who's 18, 19, 20 is an adult leader, but does not count towards that 2 deep leadership ratio. In the Cub program, there are additional supervision requirements based on whatever level of scout you have. For example, Webelos can do some activities as a den without a parent there for every child. But again, that 2 deep leadership requirement, 2 registered adults over age 21 remains, no matter what the activity is, no matter what the duration is, even if you're going to do a service project across town or whatever it might be, that you need to have the minimum 2 adults registered 21 or older.
Yeah, great questions.
I got a few more. Someone's asking, are we going to require leaders to be trained for the position?
So the requirement already exists, right, Terry? So a lot of people just choose to not go through the training, but the requirement is there. Is there a checkpoint or a mandate that keeps you from being able to register or continue registration for being trained or not trained, let's say? No, there's nothing that kicks you out of scouting for not being trained. However, training is required. And the value of training for our scouts is that they get a better quality program. And there's no doubt that we want a quality program for each of our kids. Any thoughts on that, Terry?
Yeah, training is definitely an expectation. While there are councils that will not allow you to register without being position trained, that's not the case here currently. It is an expectation, and we hope that all are, because that definitely is quality scouting.
And I mean, really and truly, the expectation we should have for every unit, and you guys on here tonight with us get to help share this word and spread it, is we want each of our units to be 100% trained.
Yep.
Any other questions, Levi?
Yeah, there's still questions.
Great.
A couple of questions dealing with essentially a last minute where a parent is unable to attend a camp out. And so a family member, a grandparent, aunt, uncle, a cousin, brother, sister, someone else is in charge of bringing that child, and how we would handle that situation in regards to registering then that person. How that turnaround time would work, I guess.
The Scouts BSA level, I mean, they can drop their scout off. I'm sorry, go ahead.
So I think the question is more pertaining towards, let's say, a Cub Scout level, right? Because that's the concern.
Yes.
If it was a Scouts BSA unit or older youth program, then really and truly the youth is going with the unit and they get to go off and have fun. The parent can't go, but in this particular case, you're talking about a grandparent. Can they go? Well, the answer to the simple question is in that scenario, they have to be registered. They have to go to the youth protection training, and which is meeting the bare minimum just to do it, right? And so, Terry, look, scouting is setting up these barriers to abuse for a reason, to help protect our kids. And it helps us as parents also know the safety lines to protect ourselves, but it also helps us know what lines not to cross. And if we allow adults that don't have any of those understandings to go, then they themselves are putting themselves at risk. But we're also acknowledging if we create an exception for one, we create a pattern where somebody could be an exception again and again and again, and you can continue to find reasons and excuses. look, the simple thing is out there that exists always is if you're looking for an excuse, you will always be able to find it. And what we're trying to do is help not give excuses. We want our parents, grandparents, and anybody that's looking to go, if they're not a legal guardian, they're gonna need to be registered. Any thoughts and feelings on that?
That all makes sense.
Yeah, okay.
New adults registering to bring Scout to overnight will also need medical forms for camping overnight.
Yeah, absolutely. None of the other rules related to activities in scouting are changing or revising other than this specific rule about registration. So the same medical, and again, that's not, frankly, that's not just for camping. Again, that's for any scouting activity. You know, you're doing a day hike, whatever it is, your leader should have BSA health and medical record parts A and B for any short-term activity. In case there's an emergency. So that definitely continues to be the case.
Question specifically about scenario 3, is a second adult required to be in the driver only car?
I'll answer that. So no, to clarify, two deep leadership does not mean there are two rules in scouting that sometimes get a little intermixed. Two deep leadership, which we talked about, and the concept of no one-on-one contact. So in the BSA, we have a rule that there's no one-on-one contact between an adult and a scout that is not their own child. So for example, in a driver situation, if you have an adult and you have two scouts in the car, you don't have one-on-one contact. So that's an acceptable situation. Two deep leadership is with regards to the activity or the event. So on that campout, you shouldn't be going on that campout unless two leaders are going on that campout. You shouldn't be having that troop meeting or service project unless two leaders are in attendance. But driving is more about the no one-on-one contact rule. So if you had two scouts in the car who were not your children, if neither one of them were your children, you would want to make sure that those scouts are being returned to their parents at the same time so that you're not in a one-on-one situation with a child that's not your own.
So for example, Terry, you can have two vehicles going, two adults going, and 6 youth going,
right,
and spread the youth across the two vehicles,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, as long as you have two deep leadership for the outing or activity, and you have the no one-on-one contact for any scenario in scouting.
And Levi, I should say, if there's any additional questions that are tied to these questions that we're answering, make sure to help jump in with those too at any point.
Yeah, and you know, the other thing that I would say is the scouting.org youth protection page has a pretty thorough frequently asked questions that covers a lot of topics that have come up tonight or in other scenarios that are pretty well articulated too.
Yeah.
So.
The question about group YPT trainings facilitated by units, if the units will be able to do those, or if everyone will have to go online and take the training individually.
I'm going to open it up to possibly our scout executive or our commissioner to briefly touch on that question about group youth protection training and who and what.
Gary, you or me?
Why don't you start and I'll fill in any holes.
All right. Essentially, the BSA is highly discouraging group classes for youth protection, specifically because we want to make sure and ensure that every adult that goes through youth protection is answering the questions and understands the material, instead of everybody raise their hand, this is the answer we think is best, and everybody does the group think response. So that's ultimately where they're driving. That's a strong recommendation. It is not a policy. We know here in Montana, because of the distances that we cover and some of those things, sometimes having access to internet and Wi-Fi and those things makes that a little more difficult. And so we have the opportunity as a council to approve a group YPT class, but we are going to do that on a case-by-case basis based on need. That's just going to be the policy that we have going forward, and so that we can ensure that. I can tell you that there's probably a lot of things coming down the line that are going to make this entire process much easier for all of us, including up to and including a very brief just basic, refresher every year, not going through an hour and a half long class every year, that sort of thing, just refresher items once you've got that initial certification. I do expect that as the organization moves forward here, we're going to see that get a little easier for all of us. So in the meantime, we will continue to approve those on a case-by-case basis if there's a need for such. As far as presenting them at the unit level, very highly discouraged. Again, what tends to happen is, and I'm not pointing fingers at anybody in our council because I know that we do it better than most anyone else, but what tends to happen is the quality of the instruction basically goes downhill, and we're just basically trying to get a checkbox done on the form. That completely negates the whole entire purpose of youth protection. Ladies and gentlemen, in the course of the next 2 months, we are going to participate in the largest youth protection settlement in the history of the United States at in excess of $2.4 billion. We can't afford to go through that again. We can't afford to have a child harmed in the program, hence all of these changes and why this is coming down the line. So youth protection has to be one of those necessary things we do, and hopefully with a positive mindset, because we really are just aiming ourselves at just protecting every single youth we possibly can in our program.
Yeah, Jory, one thing I'd add to that is you are the one that grants sole authorization for any group class that takes place. Is that correct?
Yes, obviously in concert with these guys. I don't make a lot of decisions without Terry and Pat and Levi, but we will certainly look at those across the board, and certainly we're going to be fair about that, guys. But obviously, best quality instruction we can get, and really that one-on-one is the best scenario we have. We know you answered the test. We know you were the specific respondent, and that's the best scenario for all of us.
And Jory, just to ask for a quick clarification on this, it is my current understanding that nobody right now is currently authorized to do that. Is that correct?
I have not issued an authorization recently, no.
Okay, I just want to make sure everybody else on tonight is clear of that, so that nobody thinks they can go out and do it, because there's no current authorizations for that. So
I have not been asked recently, correct?
Levi, next question.
Yeah, there's a couple questions that came in. One is, how will this change be communicated to individual units? I think for the most part, people already know about this change. It's been out there on the internet. Part of this, the purpose of this webinar is to communicate with those of you that are in leadership positions across the council and districts to help communicate this change. And then we will communicate it out via our newsletter and our website. And at roundtables, the district executives will communicate it out. And so it'll be sort of a trickle of information out, and then hoping that those of you that are in leadership will help to educate and clarify and answer those questions that are going to come up, like questions that are coming up tonight.
And Levi, let me add to that. Tonight's video is being recorded, and so we'll take and edited. We'll cut off some of these questions at the end maybe, but we'll take that heart of the video and we'll post it up online. We'll share a link for people to be able to get access to that video. And then in addition to that, tonight's PowerPoint that we used, we'll also be sharing that. And so if you received one of those email invites from me to attend tonight, you'll be getting the contents of this material I'm talking about.
Yeah, let me address that a little bit if I can too. I can tell you that the commissioner team will probably take a lead on this. Just because we have the greatest contact with our units. So I will be detailing this to the district commissioners to get down to both roundtable and unit commissioners to take this on as well. So part of tonight was to make sure we were all on the same page, kind of thing, and not to have, speculation and innuendo, rule the day.
Thank you. Levi?
Still some questions about the registration process, asking maybe a range of number of days of how long it will take to register an adult. And unless you want to answer.
Yeah, I'll take it real quick and answer it. So my expectation is that if you bring an adult application into the Scout office, that the Scout office is handling it that day and getting it into our registrar, and that our registrar has a quick turnaround for that to post. Now, this is if the application is turned in correctly, meaning that all signatures, all content has been completed on any adult application. And I'm gonna go use the bold word that I am teaching people to use. Look, if you miss on turning in some of the information, if you don't pay for the application is going to be declined, meaning it will be simply sent back to the person that has turned it in. And the boldness is we have to make it clear that if an application is turned in incomplete and not ready to go, then it should be declined. And the simple reason is a person needs to understand it is the burden of the unit and the burden of the individual to make sure that application is complete. And it is the burden of the Scout office to make sure that we get it posted in a quick and timely manner. Now, that being said, I also understand that USPS can lose it. I understand that it can bounce around between several hands in a Scout unit. I understand that it can take several people sometimes just to get it to the Scout office. And I have shared my expectations inside our Scout offices on the turnaround. So now, if you're looking for an application to post by the next day, that is not going to occur by bringing it into the Scout office. If you are wanting it to post by the next day, when we turn on the adult application process, I highly recommend that you do all adult applications through that online application process. And in that process, when you do it one day, it'll show up for people to approve it. For any adult, it's going to be that approval process will require the charter rep or the institutional head to approve the application, or one of the charter rep delegates. Any of those people can go in and approve an adult application, and once they approve it, it will post overnight and it will start to show up in Scout Book and on the unit roster the following day.
And if I can, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but if I can just briefly add, right now, once registration is getting in the hands of our registrar, it's happening pretty promptly. Obviously, there are certain times of the year that we have more applications coming in or rechartering or whatever. In general, to be frank, as Pat said, I think when there's a delay in registration, it's often because thinking about a paper application, going from the parent or adult to a unit leader, it may sit with them for a period of time, and then to the charter organization representative, and it may sit with them. So it may be multiple days from the time an individual turns it in till it makes its way to any council staff member's hands at all. That's often where there's a large gap. And then again, missing youth protection, missing dates, missing signatures, those are usually the other holdups. Once we have it and it's complete, it's getting processed pretty quickly. So hopefully that together all answered that question.
And I'll add, look, the Scout offices have had a situation where have we necessarily posted? No, right away. And the dilemma is we haven't communicated back always that an application isn't complete. And so that's on us. And we've worked to identify that as a situation, and we've worked to help address that in each individual office. We've cleaned up a lot of membership and helped make sure it's easier flow for our staff also. And we have a new registrar, and he's been awesome to help get us posted on anything and been doing a phenomenal job. So I think over the last 2 months, many of you may have seen things post a lot faster, and a large part of that is us working to handle this, our processes inside the Scout office.
All right, I think it's one last question. And that question is YPT required only for registered adults, or do all participants need to take YPT? Terry.
I'll be happy to answer that. Youth protection training is highly encouraged for any parents, adults that are participating in scouting, but it is required for registered leaders. So in a general scouting sense, no, it is not required for any given participant. However, keep in mind there may be some more restrictive rules, like you may go to a summer camp in a location that requires every person have youth protection training, whether they're registered or not, if they're only staying for a day, whatever it is. That really depends on specific situations. As a general BSA policy in Montana also, youth protection training is required for registered leaders and highly encouraged for anyone else participating in scouting at the adult level.
One thing to keep in mind on that though, is we only track those people who are registered. So if parents, that kind of thing, take YPT and want to stay current with that, that is on the unit to track that. We have no visibility into people who are not registered.
Right. And I think one of the questions that a lot of times people get is also, when should I register an adult? And I get it, there's a question mark to that, right? But the reality is if any adult is going to start to interact with our youth, and if they start to meet that definition of now they're supervising our youth, then they are going to have to register. So if they're the adult that's sitting over in the corner of the room and they're on their phone, yeah, they don't have to register. But once they take on a supervisory role, once they start to interact with our youth and have presence with them, any type of interaction, leadership wise, instructional wise, they have to start to be registered, right? So that's when they have to start taking the youth protection training and then going into their leader specific training also.
One question that came up, and Levi's typing, so I'll take this one. It says, can an adult applicant take YPT before the app is posted? Matter of fact, you kind of have to take it before the post is.
Yeah.
And you don't need to be registered to take YPT, but you need to have it once you become registered.
Correct.
I think the question was more of, can they take YPT before they even submit an application? And the answer is then yes, they can go
Absolutely.
on to Scouting, create a profile, take YPT, and then have that done before they even submit an application. And then it's just a matter of the process in the application for them to be registered.
And actually, it's encouraged. It answers one of the questions earlier about the timing if somebody needs to do something quickly. If I were running a unit today, I would encourage every parent to take youth protection training, just because it gives them an idea of what we're doing to support the safety of our youth, and quite frankly, to support the safety of our volunteers. So.
And Gary, there is two kinds of pride in life, and there's the good kind of pride where we should take great pride in the youth protection program that we offer. We are a leader in our country for youth protection. Standout example of it. We work hard at it as an organization, and as any parent leader should participate in this, be aware that they should take pride in knowing that we are a leader in this subject matter. So Levi, any other good questions out there?
No, I addressed some, and there are no more open questions.
Okay. Great. Well, Jory, Gary, any last closing thoughts?
No, I think you guys have hit the nail on the head. Ultimately, we want the safest place we can possibly have for youth, and we appreciate all of your efforts in helping us achieve that. Sometimes these things seem difficult, and the reality is, a lot of things that are worthwhile are. And so if we can take that spirit to task here on making sure that the adults that are around our youth are trained, that's going to help us in a myriad of ways, especially as we start having situations where we have to look at youth and identify youth that may be having an issue, and we can help them through that process. And so being aware of the situation, being aware of the signs to look for, is just a better scouting environment for all of us. I think it helps our communities. I think it helps our schools. I think it puts us really, as these guys have mentioned, right at the point of the spear and the best of the best. And I'm pretty proud of that. So appreciate everybody's efforts in that regard.
Gary, any last thoughts too?
Well, I would state that people should be seriously looking to connect with their unit commissioners, bring these topics up with their unit commissioners. The district commissioner and the district execs will certainly be leading the role on this. I will be deeply involved, both from the youth protection standpoint, as well as making sure that information for the commissioners is there, whether they attended tonight or not. I'm gratified to see the number of commissioners that did attend, but let's keep the channels of communication open. We need to be clear and understanding why we're doing this, and we need to all be on the same page as we bring this information forward. So that would be my closing. Pat, thank you.
Yeah, Terry and I really want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Look for more information from an email that I'll send out in regards to this also with the contents. If nothing else, God bless and go be a great scout.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Come see us at convention.